On the next page, we do a little bit more a definition with what we call polyhedrons and not polyhedrons. And so the polyhedrons right here would be made up of the prisms and the pyramids that we saw on the previous page, so we can look at those. And then the non-polyhedrons would be the ones that are listed here. So it's kind of like polygon and not polygon for the two-dimensional, and now we're talking about three dimensions. So those polyhedrons are made up of polygons, versus the non-polyhedrons are not made up of polygons, but they're made up of faces or sides that are more curved, like the cylinder or the cone or the sphere. You can read in more detail about that, but essentially polyhedron versus polygon just means it's three-dimensional. And that would be true for the non-polyhedrons as well, but more specifically, that's made up of, the polyhedrons are made up of polygons in a three-dimensional sort of format. So the polyhedrons below here, when we are looking at, for instance, prisms, we always name them by the base, which is not necessarily the bottom of the polyhedron. Like, we know that the base here is going to be a triangle because those are the congruent and parallel faces that are connected by the rectangles. So in this case, this would be called a triangular prism. We know it's a prism, and the bases are triangles, so triangular prism. In a prism like the next one, we actually have three pairs of opposite and parallel bases, and they're all rectangles, and this is a prism. So rectangular prism. In the next one, the bases are pentagonal or pentagons, so we call it a pentagonal prism. And then the next one after that, notice we switch over to pyramids because now we have one base and then triangular sides that meet at a vertex. Again, we name the pyramid based on the base shape. So this is a triangular pyramid. This one looks to be a rectangular pyramid, so it's a little bit hard to tell if that's a perfect rectangle or if it's just a parallelogram or square, but we're going to call it a rectangular pyramid. Doesn't have any more specific labels. And on this one, if we look carefully at it, that is a pentagon. So pentagonal pyramid. So that's how you name those polyhedrons. Now there are some special type of polyhedrons. So a polyhedron is a regular polyhedron if all of its faces are regular congruent polygons and all the edges are congruent. So remember we talked about regular means in a polygon sense equiangular and equilateral. Well, in a three-dimensional sense, all of the sides, which are the faces, have to be those regular congruent polygons, and then all of the edges that connect them are also congruent, which would have to be true if the polygons themselves were regular. So there's exactly 5 types of these regular polyhedrons, and they are called the Platonic solids because of the Greek mathematician Plato used them extensively. So you might be a little bit familiar with these. They pop up every now and then, and we use some of them in some of our games. But again, all of the faces are regular polygons that have equal lengths. So the first Platonic solid, all the faces are triangles, and so there's 4 faces that are all the same. And since there's 4 faces, this is what is called a tetrahedron, as a more general term to a triangular pyramid. Certainly it is a triangular pyramid also, but since all of the faces are congruent regular polygons, regular triangles, and there's 4 of them, tetra means 4. If you know the game Tetris, that you play the video game, you know that each one of those shapes has 4 little squares that make them up. So tetra means 4. Quad means 4, tetra means 4, with their Latin and Greek prefixes. If it is 6 square faces, the more general term for that is called a hexahedron. But of course, you all know it by its more common name, which is a cube, because you have 6 regular quadrilaterals, and a regular quadrilateral is a square. So it's got 6 square faces to it. All right, then they start to get a little bit more unique. So the next one, notice it's made up of 8 triangles that kind of come together, and it's kind of like 2 pyramids stacked on top of each other. If you count the number of faces, there are 8. And so it's called an octahedron. All right, octa means 8. And then, this one's a little bit hard to see. It's a little bit hard to sketch here. But this has 12 regular pentagonal faces. Notice they all fit together if you have 12 regular pentagons. And 12 is dodecagon, so this is a dodecahedron. And then if we skip up to 20, we talked about that in our polygon work. That was icosagon, so this is an icosahedron. If it has 20 equilateral triangular faces, or that is what you would call a icosahedron.